Author Michael Anderle has taken the idea of the minimum viable product from the tech world that he comes from and has applied it to his author business. How did it work out? I'd say it's worked out pretty well. He published his first book on November 2nd, sold his first single copy that day, wrote and published two more books in November, one more in December, and one in January. He's up to 5 now. And in January, he will do in excess of $10,000 in total revenue for those 5 books. We're going to talk to him about how he did it and how Facebook ads helped him to make it happen in this edition of the Author Biz. One last thing before I go. This episode is fairly lengthy. It's going to be about 40 or so minutes. So if you look down below in the notes, I've got timestamps for different parts of the video that might speed you through to the places you're most interested. Michael Anderle, welcome to the Author Biz.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to chat with you. You and I connected prior to the end of the year. You have listened to a few episodes of the Author Biz and heard I was a spreadsheet geek, and sent me a copy of your sales spreadsheet, and I'm looking through it. First off, it's super cool. You've got this dashboard thing with a home page, and then you've got a bunch of tabs with all of this other information in it, and I spent some time sort of digging through it, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, this guy's selling a lot of books in a very short period of time. November 2nd or 3rd, I think, was your first day of sales, the 2nd. There was one sale for $2.99, enough borrows to generate about roughly another $3, so around $6 on your first day. That here, it's we're recording on January 20th. What was your revenue yesterday?
500. I can pull this up real fast, but the short answer is it was about 500 and some odd dollars.
And prior to that, for over the course of the last week, you've had $400 days, $500 days, $600 days, and I think a $700 day. And this is since November 2nd. So this is
Correct.
An interesting story. What you've done is an interesting story. You came at this with very little knowledge. You didn't do a lot of research first. You just wrote a book, published it. You've written several. You have 5 books now, which has helped, and we'll get into all of that. But essentially, you've gone from zero to you'll do over $10,000 this month, starting on November 2nd, and we're not even through January yet. So November, December, January, in 3 months, you've gone from zero to $10,000 a month, which is extraordinary. And it's not just on the back of one book that happened to blow up. This is a series that you've created. So let's talk about the books first. What genre do you write in, and how did you produce 5 books so quickly?
The genre is actually mixed, and as you mentioned before, I at the beginning of here, I didn't come into this with any preconceived notions. So I wrote what I enjoyed, and what I've been enjoying is paranormal, urban fantasy, military sci-fi, and sci-fi. So those are the things that I was enjoying. And the other part was I've been a lifetime reader, and Kindle Unlimited is my buddy. And so I found myself, when I was searching for something to read on the weekend, that I would look at only things that had at least 3 books. So if it was a trilogy, I wanted 3. If it was something that was going to go on, I wanted at least 3. And if it was 4 or 5, it got my attention even faster. So since I wanted to write what I wanted to read, I needed to pull together all of these different desires. I wanted to write something about vampires. I wanted to write something about computers. I wanted to write something that was kind of military a little bit. So I've been told in one of the reviews that if you love paranormal, urban fantasy, military, and sci-fi, the book's for you. But when it comes to what's your genre, I'm like, I'm a mutt.
Yeah, in my mind, just the covers. The covers look like paranormal covers to me, and that's the first thing I thought when I looked at the covers. Not the kind of thing I typically read. I did download the sample of your first book and started reading it, and I can see why you're attracting readers so quickly. The way you tell a story draws readers in, and I'm thinking I might have to read this series. So we'll see how this goes. So I may be one of your gazillion readers here soon. What was your plan when you started this? Had you created all 5 of these books ahead of time? Had you written them all, or?
No, what happened is, and originally there was 13 books, and there's going to be probably a total of 21 across 3 arcs of 7.
Okay.
But my original plan was, about a year and a half ago, I had written about 20 to 30,000 words, and my wife is a global marketing director, and so she leaves the States from time to time for a week or more at a time. So I had time on my hands, and I decided I'd go ahead and write something. Well, I got done with it. She came back home. Life got busy. I stuck it in the digital drawer, and nothing happened for 6 months. So then I happened to pull it back out, and I was reading it. I had completely forgotten a lot of what I wrote, but I was intrigued. And an hour later, I'm like, oh, I like this. This is pretty good. So I dusted it back off and tried to write again, and I cratered. So I tried to plot it out, and that was worse. And so I was like, oh, screw this. I've got my job. I've got my company to go deal with. So I went and did that. And then a couple of months ago in October, my oldest son is an amazing writer. And I was encouraging him. I've been encouraging him. It's like, you've got to get on Amazon. You've got to do this. You got to do this. And he wants more detail. How does it work? I can't really tell him how it works because I haven't done it. And so I had used the Kindle PDF to book for my consulting business so that I could say, hey, I had a book, here, look, go ahead and download it. So I went ahead and said, okay, I'm going to finish this thing. I pull it back out, and I realized that part of my problem is that I'm using pages or Word, same difference. And I have 30,000 words on this thing. It's just one long missive. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I said, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go find software that's for writers. And I looked and I researched, and I found Scrivener, and they have a 30-day trial. So I downloaded that. And I spent the 10 or 15 minutes to kind of review the general idea of what it is. And so I put my book in there. And then I found out later I'm a pansies. So I just write the thing. So I have the general conception of what I want. I wrote the first book.
And this is in October?
The last week of October, okay. I finished out the last 40,000, 50,000 words. So I put it up there in the evening of November 2nd. And certainly I wake up the next morning, I find out I've already got a sale and some people reading part of it. So I'm like, woo, I'm loving this. And so
all right, let me stop you here for a minute. You wrote this, you self-edited it. Is that the way you did it, or did you have any?
Right.
Do you have beta readers or anything? Okay, all right. So I just want to get that in there for background because we're going to get back to this.
Yeah, I mentioned in one of the author notes that I come from a technical background, and I'm very familiar with the concept of the MVP, minimally viable product. And so if the technology field didn't create that term, we stole it and owned it like a millionaire. So that's what I did. I just minimally viable product. And November is NaNoWriMo. And I had first learned of that last year, did nothing with it. So this year, I'm coming off this first book. I know I want a series. I know I need that 3 is 1. I'm not going to go anywhere I felt until I had 3 of them because based on my own writing. So I hunkered down, and 9 days later, I produced the second book. So I released the second one.
All right, how many words is the second book?
67,000.
Okay, and that's astonishing. A lot of people are going to say, holy, I mean, we've had guests on the show that write 5,000-10,000 words a day, and inevitably the comments are, that's not possible. But there are people that do it. Russell Blake does it. You're obviously doing it as well. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so my goal, once again, 3 books. So in the second author notes, because in the first one I mentioned I'll have the second one out in 2 weeks. That was my goal, and I beat it. And in the second author notes, I go, I'm not going to profess to have this out in 2 weeks, or 9 days, I think I say. And it didn't, because it took 13. I dropped it on November 24th, 25th, right in that time frame. So that's the third one that was coming out. And so now I'm starting to get a few reviews coming in that are going, your editing really needs help.
And I saw some of those. I saw some of those when I was reviewing this. And that's interesting because, again, we get back to the minimum viable product. You put it out there. You didn't You didn't hold yourself back thinking, I want this to be perfect so that I don't embarrass myself or I don't put out a book that has a typo in there. You wrote the book, you wrote the story, and you put it out there.
I didn't want to spend $500 on editors for something that wasn't going to sell.
Right. Uh-huh.
Very business oriented from that perspective. It's you don't do it. You just fortunately and unfortunately, it's both sides to the same knife. I was successful enough that my reviews were coming in faster than I could decide that this was a viable product and get it editing. I had no idea that editors took so long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, hey, I find it in my consulting business, I use external people all the time, all over the world. I had no idea that editors had a timeline, that you had to get on their timeline, that it was usually a month ahead of time. I was like, oh my God.
And in your books, I do see, especially in the earlier book, it's like release date 1, release date 2. I mean, it's like, a software product, a 1.0, a 1.1, and a 1.2.
Absolutely. And even now, the gentleman, Stephen Russell, that helped me with 5 is going back, and I've hired him to help me go back with 1, 2, 3. I've got 2 and 3 with another editor, but I like how he does things. So we're going back and still going through all of the books again.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the reviews that occasionally would say the editing sucks. Those tended to still be 4-star reviews, or maybe even a 5-star review that, hey, I love this story, I wish you had an editor, kind of thing. So people loved the stories. Okay, so that's, we're racing through this to a certain extent, but you had a plan. You wanted to have multiple books. You executed on that. What's your production schedule going forward? What are you planning now going forward? You have the 5 now? Is that it? 5, yeah.
We just released the 5th. I just released the 5th one a week ago today. So that was on the 13th. And that would mean about 29 days from book 4 to book 5.
Okay.
A lot of good things happened with that effort, getting an editor on board, getting another one who might be coming back from where he is that helped me with 4, a couple of sisters that I met on Facebook that are just hilarious. These older ladies, I kid you, I can't make up the stuff that these ladies do in real life. Anyway, they've agreed to be readers. So my process now for 6 is I'm writing so far, and then I drop it to the guy that's helping me, Steven. He's going to go through and edit it. So by the time I finish, I'll be going back to the beginning of the book. By the time he finishes, I'll have finished. So my goal is, crossing my fingers, this month, because I'd love to have 6 books in 3 months. I think that would be a heck of a story.
It's already a heck of a story, but it just keeps getting better. Okay, now we've talked a little bit about sales figures. I went on to Amazon today and I looked at the sales ranking just to sanity check this whole thing, because I've seen your spreadsheet, but I know how spreadsheets work. I mean, you can change things in there. Book 1, overall Amazon rank is around 2,500. Pretty darn good. Book 2 and book 3 and book 4, all right around 4,000. And book 5, the one that you released on the 11th, Amazon ranked 2,600. So when I go through my own mind and calculate what that means in terms of sales, all of your numbers make complete sense to me. So I'm completely comfortable having you on the show and saying, man, this guy actually did this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. I didn't consider not doing the truth, because I dropped you the same spreadsheet I use from, it's a business.
Yeah, so. And I assumed that it was, but sometimes people are BSers. So you just don't know. And I based on everything that I've seen, you're not. And there may be people out there listening going, there's no way this is possible because I haven't been able to do it, but it is possible because you're doing it.
It's not only that I'm doing it, but you can look at like Annie Bellet, Bellet, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She does the 20-sided sorceress. She just dropped her 2015 numbers. She's doing 236,000 in 2015.
Well, there are a lot of big numbers, but there aren't a lot of people that I've seen that have gone from 0 to 10,000 plus months in 3 months without just a single book that blows up. I mean, you're taking the approach that I want to write a series, and I'm going to, well, let's go back to your original plan. I wanted to open the show with your original plan, and we didn't. Your original plan was to have 20 books and make $50,000 a year. What was the logic behind that plan?
Long story short, I would like to retire and have residual income. I looked at what was going on with my first book and found that within a few days I was already doing $7 a day for one book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did the calculations going, what if I did 20 books? How much would that look like? And if you do $7.50 a day for each book of 20 books for 1 year, it's $54,000 a year. So I'm like, 20 books to 50K, completely doable. Because I was at that time, remember, I had just dropped a book out in basically a couple of weeks. I hadn't had the bad reviews yet that talked about editing. So I dropped the next one out in 9 days, and the average went between $6 and $8 a day for each book. So I'm still on track for that 7.5. And I'm really going, okay, I'm getting pretty excited about this. This looks doable. So I dropped the third book at the end of the month. And after that one drops, now my average is going up to $11 or $12 a day for each of the 3 books. So that's surpassing my original goal of $7.50. And I'm like, I'm getting excited because it's completely doable. And so the numbers were supporting my original desire completely.
Okay. And there have been people who've talked about this. I mean, this is the kind of thing that people did 3 years ago, or maybe even 2.5 years ago. Russell Blake talked about it a lot, just write more books. And now he's saying this doesn't work anymore. And there are other people saying this doesn't work anymore. And you and I were talking before we came on. We all live in an echo chamber, whether it's a political echo chamber or a social issues echo chamber or a writing echo chamber. I listen to these few gurus and I believe what they say. You came at this cold. You weren't listening to those gurus because you didn't know to be listening to those gurus yet. So you came at it with a, why can't I do this type approach? And lo and behold, it's working.
Yeah, I came at it from a, this is how I am a reader approach. I read 3, 4, 5 books in a weekend. I love a series that if I'm going to invest in book 1 and I love the characters, I want to stay with the characters. John Conroe with his Demon Accord series. There are a few others. Lawrence Donners with his El Dansai series. These are individuals who I go back and reread because I love the characters. I might skip part of the book because I didn't like that part of the story, but I got 6 books to read, so it's not like, I'm missing any one particular piece too bad.
Right. All right. Well, we've highlighted some of the sales numbers, but just sort of walk us through the last, what's it been, 10 weeks? Walk us through the last 10 weeks. You don't have to give, every single number, but just sort of, it's been a steady creep up, not even a creep, a steady slant up, and then it's ratcheted up even further as more books are produced.
Right. So in the beginning, starting on November 2nd, the averages were around the $7 range. The second book comes out, they took a slight dip, but then they kind of stayed it out. And then the third book comes out, and we're starting to move to $11 to $12 range. When the fourth book comes out, which is December 15th, it started moving to the $15, $18, $20 a book range until December 18th. Although I had done a campaign, I'd shut my Amazon or no, I hadn't. But anyway, I'd done one. But that night, December 18th, I had done my first Facebook ad, and I considered it what's called a direct ad. So I wasn't doing an ad where I'm saying, get this book free, give me your email address. I'm doing here are the books, please come buy the series. And because it's a series, I only have to focus people into book 1. So I don't have to, I can promote all 4. But the reality is I put them into book 1, 80% of the people, or 72, whatever, then buy book 2, 96% of the people book by 3, then not book 4, book 5. So I can see the numbers because of the spreadsheet, what's going on. And then over the Christmas holidays, my daily sales start ratcheting up to $40 a day, $50 a day, $60 a day per book on the back of Facebook. And so I started at $5 a day, then rapidly went to 8, 12, 15, 25, and then I'm pushing $50.
Advertising. Are you talking advertising expense?
I am.
Okay, and let's go back to the original Facebook ad and these campaigns. These are not price promotions. These are not, hey, here's my free book, go download my free book, and then maybe you'll like it and maybe you'll buy more. It's, here's a link to my book, go buy it at full price.
Correct. The $2.99 is the price. And I had by this time read enough to realize that free is a highly questionable issue unless you're doing email marketing for it. And it didn't help in your rankings. So I didn't want to do any of that. So yes, everything was $2.99. I created 3D covers. I created, the large ad itself, and made something so that people understood this is part of a
What
series.
does that mean, a 3D cover?
That's whenever you take the front that you have with your normal Amazon book cover,
Mm-hmm.
and you use Photoshop to wrap it around a pretend 3D book.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And so I laid those up going across so that people could see whenever they saw the ad, there's not just one book. And then when you look at the books, I used a science fiction font, and, kind of kept it to where you understood this is part of a series. Made
And you
sure
did
that
you did all of this yourself. You're technical. You have a
yes.
technical background. You understand all this, but you didn't go out and hire someone. You didn't go hire an expert. You just decided this is the thing I should do, and you did it. Because the experts would say you need to make the first book free.
Correct. I did not do any of that. And I did not listen to the experts at that situation because part of it was I still didn't. I mean, what happens if I had gone to 100,000? I would have had 10,000 people yelling at me about my editing.
Good point. If they're going to yell at you, you should at least make $2.20 from them.
Yeah. So no, yes, I did that, and I think there are many different ways to get to any one particular point. I will be talking shortly about the 99-cent effort, but correct, I stayed at $2.99.
Okay, and right now you are roughly $100 a day per book. In 5 books, you did $500 yesterday, maybe a little bit more than that.
If you include the mass, because anytime that a new book comes out, I get a massive hit.
Okay.
So as of today, when we're talking, book 1 is literally at $100 a day average daily sales. Book 2 is $81. Book 3 is $76. Book 4 is $74. Book 5 is $153.
Okay, all right.
So $97 if you average all of them.
Walk through those numbers again a little slower because that's interesting. We
Okay.
can all then figure out what the retention rates are.
Well, I can tell you the retention rates. Average daily sales right now for January is $100 a day.
For book 1.
December, yes, for December. For December, it was $39.84 a day.
Okay.
For January, it was $7.30 a day. So you can see the progression as it goes up.
You said
so book two-
$7. You meant something else.
No,
You said in
book
January.
1. Oh, did I? I apologize. November.
Okay. All right.
So $739, $100. $81 for book 2, $76 for book 3, $74 for book 4, $153 for book 5. And that's completely on the back of the last 5 or 6 days. I won't say completely. It was obviously high enough, but
Okay. Now let's so we've got sort of a high level background of the sales and the success you're having monetarily, and your first marketing effort was that Facebook campaign, right?
yes.
And you've done some other things since then, but none of them, particularly breathtaking. They're all sort of minor things.
Let me jump. No, it's the first successful. I did
Okay.
Amazon Marketing Services
Okay.
before that.
All right.
And I did it where I broke it out by author. I looked at also bots. I looked at breaking out my different ads, so I could figure out what was going on. And at the end of all of this effort, and it was an effort because the Amazon Marketing Services is not easy to build 20 different ads. So at that point, I believe it helped get my name out. I believe it helped create also bots, which is important. But my income was probably commensurate with my outflow. So spend 100, got 100.
Okay.
So I also learned that if you pause Amazon, it takes up to 24 to 48 hours before those ads start kicking back in again. So it's like, it really made me think, should I pause this? Should I pause this? I used Bargain Booksy at $2.99. It made money. Spent 35, got 55, but that's early. I did a couple of others that one of them I wouldn't do again. And then Facebook, because, and I guess here's the part I don't know that we've spoken to. I'm a digital sales and marketing consultant for my company. That's what I do. So my clients have never been related to authors. It's been in the automotive field. It's been in IT. It's been in real estate. It's been in all of these different areas, but I have played in video production. I have played in Facebook ads. I have played in Google, the GDN area. I've had my own pay-per-click podcast. So I did that with a Google rep last year. So I have some experience related to all of this. So that helped.
Indeed. But what's interesting to me is that you brought your own business experience to this rather than the echo chamber that many of the listeners and I are in constantly, hearing the same voices over and over again. You brought a different set of experiences to the table, and it's worked extraordinarily well for you, I think.
Yeah. One little aside, because I have been a little bit impatient, and because maybe I didn't study as well as I needed to, I made a comment one time on K-boards. And in going through all of this stuff, because I was anxious to share that, hey, people, you can have this success. Too many people are saying, I only did this, I only did that. It's like the general consensus of what you need to do is out there. It is pretty obvious where you need to have a minimum. Do you have an attractive cover? Yes or no? Do you have a good blurb or a good description? Is your story even riveting enough to get people to want to read it after a few pages? Because if it's not, kiss it goodbye. Stop complaining and go fix it. I was blessed enough that I had at least the core part of that. So I was writing an article or a forum post, and I happened to mention Mark Dawson's ads. Now, I had been listening to these podcasts, so I was aware of what Mark Dawson was doing and where he had gotten it from, because I had been part of that digital marketing for the last few years. I'm like, oh, great. I hadn't heard that Mark's course talked about direct ads. So I put in one of my things, I'm doing Facebook ads, but not like Mark Dawson does. At least, not that I'm aware of. So I had that little caveat, which was great because Mark reached out to me and corrected me. And he did it on the side, which was fantastic. But I felt so bad that I had done this. So I went back, edited my things, and say, hey, just an update. If you're reading this after, I wrote this, Mark has let me know that, no, yes, his course does have this.
Mark's a great guy.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about some of the other marketing things that you've done, because they've all been, try it, see what works, and do a little bit more kinds of things. What other things have you done? Let's talk, and then talk specifically about what's worked well.
Okay. Absolutely, Facebook has worked well. Starting with the $5 ads, the next part is that you do have to figure out which people, since I had purposely set up my first 7-book arc, Paranormal Vampire, that was my branding that I was going for, that was the faces I was creating, everything else. It was very easy for me to then go and find 180,000 people on Facebook that loved vampires, loved paranormal, urban fantasy. That was simple. So once you have the ad and you put those together, it started generating leads going over there. And I saw that Friday, pretty much nothing, but I don't think Facebook really had time because I did it at 5 o'clock Central Time. Saturday, it goes up. Sunday, it goes up. Monday, it's going up. You can spot, when you look at the graph, the day that I started and my trajectory going up. And then, of course, spending more and more money as I'm doing it and going forward. I had it was Christmas time when this is happening. So I did one of these ads where I took out the little blurb at the top, and I put ho-ho for Christmas, uh-oh. So I had ho-ho in green, uh-oh in red, and of course you have this vampire face and everything else. And it got, not only did it not get approved, they shut down all of my ads for my Catherian Books Facebook page because they thought I had bad words in it. I'm like, what, is ho a bad word? Is this is not for whore, uh-oh. So I'm trying to go back and forth, but I happen to be over in Phoenix, Arizona right now on a business trip when I find this out first thing in the morning, and I'm freaking because my sales are not happening. And you can see that day when that happened, my sales dropped precipitously. Now, Tuesdays are never good necessarily, but this was not a good thing. So, I'm just freaking. And I finally got them back on Wednesday, and we come back up the ramp. So I completely attribute Facebook as having value for me.
And do you have any sense, and I know you do, but if you spend $1, what do you get back?
You know what? The way I do it is I look at what is my daily spend, how much money am I bringing in, and is my daily spend doing that? Before I was doing this, I was probably around the $17 to $18 range. And, I could look at, in fact, while we're talking, let me go ahead and look it up. So on 12, we'll go ahead and use 18 because that is the one I made $42 that day. I jumped to 124 the next day, and this is on like a $5 to $8 ad. 220, 249, so 212. Even when I drop back down to my low of $152, you can see that even if you took the $42, $49 range I had for the previous 2 days, add 50, I'm still taking an extra $60, $70 above that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't doing $50 ads. I was doing like $20 at that time. So as I started doing 50, which was late in December, I'm pushing $200+ a day.
Okay.
So to give you, that's considerable, probably 3 to 1 if I had to guess, just based on the numbers we talked about right there.
Okay, so let's say for the last week when you had a $400 day, a $500 day, a $600 day, and a $700 day. How much did you spend advertising on those days?
For the $400 day, which was the 14th, I had just released the new book, so that was part of it. But $50. The 15th was Friday. There was no Facebook advertising on Friday, so I paused it, and that was the I Love Vampire novels that came out. That was my first $400 day, $428 on that one, and I loved it. It was like, wow, man. And then Saturday comes along, and the Fussy Librarian tacks on to what I Love Vampire Novels was doing, and now that's my first $500 day. And now we have a bunch, and because there's 5 in the series and you have the Kindle Unlimited, all of these people were put into book 1 at effectively like 470 KENP. Mm-hmm. So I'm still getting 80% going, or 70% plus going to book 2, and then 90 plus going to book 3. So now I have, call it another 2,000 KENP, 4 books. So when they're tacked in 1, so all of a sudden my KENP, let me take a look at that real quick.
Okay, for people who don't know what KENP is, walk through that.
Okay, so when you're in Kindle Unlimited, you have the opportunity to be part of the Select plan, which means that those that pay $9.99 a month can read however much is there. Mm-hmm. As an author, we get paid by the page, at least KENP 2.0, and I was never part of 1.0. It's not relevant to me. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's at 0.0, effectively 0.46 of a penny.
Okay.
So a little bit less than half a penny you get paid for your December payments. And if you go to K-Boards, people are up in arms. The world is coming to an end over this. But on the 21st, all the way through, call it the December 31st, I was at 33,000. So even all the way close to January 12th, which is kind of right before January 12th, January 13th, I'm in the 37,000, 38,000. My biggest days yet. Mm-hmm. I released book 5, and now on the 14th, I'm at 41.7. So this is still doing Facebook ads. This is still just released book 5. The pent-up demand for book 5 is starting to hit with the KENP. The 15th, the I Love Vampire, and the weekend hits, I hit 55,000 KENP. So completely new opportunity for me. Saturday, 66,000. And I'm like, wow, I'm riding the wave. And then Sunday comes and we drop down to 64. And I go, man, I'm really blessed. That was a wonderful, wonderful. Mondays actually end up being, for whatever reason, Mondays are a really strong day. 77,000 KENP on Monday. And then yesterday was 81,000. So if you do the fuzzy math, it's close to $400 Kindle Unlimited alone yesterday.
And we talked before we came on the air, you're making a little bit more money on Kindle Unlimited than you are on direct sales through the course of the 3 months.
Correct. When you take the 30%, because a lot of times I'll tack gross net, so mm-hmm. call it $3 a book, and then Kindle Unlimited is just Kindle Unlimited. Whatever you get is what you get. You don't have to take 30%. Mm-hmm. So if you don't look at it, you go, oh, that's about equivalent. And you go, no, take 30% off that.
Right. Okay. Now, at some time over the course of the last week, you ran your first price promotion. Mm-hmm. So walk us through the reasoning for that, how you did it, and what the results were, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. So I've been listening to Author Biz since, back in November, certainly. And you've had authors that come on before and they talk about the 99 cents. And I had been pushing against it because of the whole not wanting to get too many readers. I have editing issues. Mm-hmm. And by now I have enough people who are going, I shotgun the books. The absolute best reviews that make me feel giddy is when people let me know that they read like I read, which is when I love a series, mm-hmm. I have to finish the books. And so I know that's coming on. I'm like, I can see the numbers. If I can get them in book one, I have a really good shot of moving them forward. And so I love vampire novels. They tell you, 99 cents is going to sell a lot more, and pretty much you have to do 99 cents. I had set up the Fussy Librarian back in December, and so last Saturday was the first real opportunity I had, so I had to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I love vampire novels. I set up like a week and a half ago, and I reached out to them and said, hey, I'll take any of these days. Just let me know of a day. I'll take this Friday, whatever. I'm happy. Well, they gave me the 15th. It was open. So I was like, well, I'm going to do 99 cents for Isle of Yen. I reached out back or changed Fussy to say, hey, I'm doing 99 cents, or actually one or the other, I forget. So now we've got the 99 cent countdown, which I was clueless first time I set that up.
Mm-hmm.
And I am coming off of this 99 cent secret sale for book 5, where I had seen my first stratospheric 120 books sold situation. So I'm like, hey, I can understand this. I don't want to do it necessarily for book 5 the whole time, because those were for the people who are really in, but I'll go back and do it for book 1 because it makes sense. So I did that, and I set it up for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so 3 days. Really wish I had done Monday. Had no clue.
Holiday, yeah.
That it was a holiday.
Uh-huh.
Missed that one. So anyway, that's kind of why I did it, where I did it. The sales went through the roof, but it is the KENP. So because so many people went that route versus buying it, I had plenty of 99 cent purchase. But the KENP pays me what, $2.20-ish,
Mm-hmm.
For the books. So even though I did the 99 cent purchase, I win on the other side.
All right. Excuse me. You started this plan with the idea of having 20 books making $50,000. That seems pretty modest right now, making $50,000 a year. I mean, you're probably going to hit $13,000 in January.
Potentially, yeah. So that's a really good question. I have my own business, and for practical reasons, for the next year and a half, I'll be doing all of this stuff, and the author side, unless it just becomes too overwhelming, is going to stay something that I push. And I want basically 21 books, the 20 books. I had no clue what a daily average could be. I had no clue. I thought $30 a day, I would, 30 times 50, and you're talking $200,000 a year. And this is completely early. I understand that. Yes, I'm putting a large amount of money in advertising, and it could dry up. Any of a number of things could happen. But if you happen to take a look at what $70 a book a day for 20 books gives you, it's $500,000. And so I take a look at that and I go, I'm not counting any chickens, but that's fun. So
it is fun, and that's the value of tracking everything the way you are with this spreadsheet of yours and your dashboard. You're tracking everything, and you've got projections, and you've got planned advertising and spent advertising, et cetera, et cetera. It's all there because of your business background. To do these things, and it puts you in a position to say, yes, I can spend this money for this, that, or the other thing. And it's
Absolutely.
working incredibly well for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an exciting ride. I look forward to keep moving. I found one thing interesting. One of the keyboard writers talked about, the freshman of 2015. So that's kind of what I label myself as being, I'm an indie freshman of 2015. And I move out there with a couple of other people, including, Aaron Hodges, who's got his own book out, and he was very helpful on the Amazon side, and just, Christine Conaway that, reached out, and it's been pretty fantastic. Rick, Gualtieri, that situation came about because of this, and I think it's, even talking with you.
Well, let's talk about the situation with Rick, because that's something I meant to get to and forgot to ask you. This was an interesting cross-promotion thing that you did with a fellow genre writer. So talk about that for a minute, if you would, because it's very clever.
Okay, so Rick is he has his series is Build the Vampire. Build the Vampire series, and he's been out there for a few years. So I've actually read some of his books a few years ago, and he is active on K-boards. And so every once in a while, I would see him answering questions to people that were going on, and I thought, man, that is really fantastic. It's kind of cool, in a fanboy kind of way, going, oh, look, there's Rick. And so I see this, and I'm talking with my wife one time because I'm looking at the KENP numbers, and I'm like, how can I get those KENP numbers up? Because I realize I'm not going to write a 120,000 word novel. That's just not in me to do. Mm-hmm. So 70,000 is my goal, and I reached 75 with this latest one. And I'm looking at that, and I'm going, what can I do to make this more fun? I already do the author's notes, but that wasn't as an effort to get money. It was because the author's notes is the single place you can be assured every single one of your readers that have read your book is going to read something you might have to say. So I personally feel it's more important than your website. It's more important than your Facebook. It's more important than any of that, and allows you to become human to them. And that's where you're going to capture them. They're going to love you, the writer, not necessarily all your books. But I still have a few weeks between book 4, book 5, book 6, book 7. There's no reason not to encourage my readers to find something else they like while they're waiting for my next book. And so I looked at this and I said, why don't I take people who've read through this book, and in the last one, I'll add the beginning of some series I think is interesting. So I reached out to Rick on K-boards, and I said, hey, look, just curious if you might be willing to do this. And he was very gracious. And he said, absolutely, would love to do this. So he dropped me 10,000 words of his first book. Mm-hmm. And I wrote an introduction, and I wrote it with my main character and the alien symbiote that's inside her. And she has a cursing mouth. She's very, she doesn't have any problem with cursing, just uninspired cursing she doesn't like. And so I set up this thing. She has this, $100 and $200 million yacht that she took from a guy who really didn't deserve it. And so she's in her suite looking through DVDs to try to find a movie to watch with this alien because she wants to bring him along with what's going on. And he asks her, he goes, why don't you have covens? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, so you find out that he's been listening to the kitchen people above had been listening to an Audible book from Bill DeVamp,
That's clever.
So they go through this process, and so finally she decides to read it. So she's like, fine. She puts the DVD up. She grabs her, vampire speech, reads it in 10 minutes, and she loves it. And so he goes, well, it was effing funny. Bill did this, and then all of a sudden it stops and says, hey, let's not ruin the book for you. If you enjoy it, here it is. Here's, Rick has been nice enough to let me drop this in. There's a link that'll take you straight to Amazon. Actually, what it does is it takes you to a counter on my website, not an affiliate link, but a counter, and then takes you from there over to Amazon. So I have any clue. Within 24 hours, one of my really good fans had already bought all of his books because he's a speed reader. Uh-huh. And he's like, he was done with book 3 in 2 days. And so he had gone through it. I can see on there that I've had about 22 uniques click through there to go over to it. So I know that there's some value. And Rick was very gracious, and he's like, well, what can I do for you? I've got this and I've got this. And I said, I appreciate this. I didn't do this in order for you to do this, but just please understand. And I will take you up on it. But understand, you're dropping another how many pages of KENP that they're going to read. I will get some payment from this. So
yeah, good point. And this is something, there is a financial reward for doing this, but it's also shining the light that you have on somebody else, which is, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. And I think it's based on your reading history. There is no way that even someone that writes as quickly as you could satisfy you, the reader. Correct. So why not point them at other books that are similar to yours?
Yeah, it is trusting my readers to come back, and that's really, I only did it in book 5. When book 6 comes out, I might go back to book 5, take it out, mm-hmm. and either put something else in book 6, because I do want them to go from 5 to 6, and I don't want them to go on a shortcut.
Right. Yeah, that's actually would be a decent way to do it, to just move it into book 6 then. Yeah. Yeah,
you move it into book 6 because there's a really good chance they're going to ignore it anyway. If they know book 6 is there, they're not going to read Rick's stuff. So they would have no reason to read it. So moving to book 6, they know there's nothing else out. Why not?
All right, this guy is Mike Anderle. We've been talking about his amazing run from $6 in sales to $500, $600, $700 a day in sales in less than 90 days. Mike, where can people find you online?
You can go to Kutherian Books, and that's K-U-R, Kutherian, T-H-E-R-I-A-N, books.com. You can find me on Facebook, same thing, Kutherian Books. Mm-hmm. Kutherian, by the way, is completely unique, and I made sure it was that. So if you look up Kutherian, there's nobody else on the internet except a couple places who've stole the book already. So find me in those two places, certainly in Amazon. You can find me there as well.
And it sounds like they can find you on K-Boards as well, and if people are listening to this show, they should be on K-Boards.
I completely endorse that.
Hey, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thanks so much for being here, Michael. That was a lot of fun. You'll find show notes for this episode with links to Michael's website and his books right here at the Author Biz website. You can also sign up for my email list there. I would love it if you would. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel, which I think is going to be like down there somewhere.